Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. This is your host, Ryan Coyle, joined as always for our weekly college football show by Joe Kometz, as we are in, can you believe it, Joe? As I say every week 12 already. It seems like just yesterday we were traveling up to Boston during week 0 for Nebraska Northwestern, watching it on the phone on the way up. But here we are with 2 weeks left in the regular season. Can't believe we're already here, but things are really heating up. We're getting to what we build up to all season with the college football playoff, and it's go time. So welcome back, Joe, and how are we?
I'm fantastic. Cool. You said it best. Feels like it was just so recent that we were up at Fenway Park having a day. The UConn Huskies were beating the Utah State Aggies. Back before, if you told me, though, back then that UConn would be where they are now, I would have laughed in your face. Would have been like, there's no way. But our Huskies, and it's crazy. There are some teams like UConn, their last regular season game is this weekend. UConn's regular season, if they don't make a bowl game, UConn's season's done on Saturday. There are some teams that are done with their regular seasons. It's crazy how we've already gotten here. We have, realistically, including this week, 3 weeks left of full football. Or 2, is it? 2 weeks, then conference title week. Yeah, so 3 weeks left. 3 weeks left of full football. Then it's Army, Navy, and it's bowl season. So let's ride. Let's get into it.
All right. As always, we'll recap last week first. I continued my bit of my little streak, I guess, here with another winning week, going 11-6-1. Pushed on the best bet and lost on the upset special, and we had that extra game in there with the Ithaca game. Shout out to the Bombers on winning that one. And Joe, back-to-back poor showings from you. 4-14 last week. By far your worst week of the season. You did win your best bet, though, with the Tennessee-Missouri over-hitting. Tennessee hitting by itself. But you lost your upset special by Troy losing by a point to Army. Beating Army by a point. But what do you have to say about this poor showing from last week?
It's very funny that my worst, I'm 4-14 with one of the wins being my best bet and the other one being the Ithaca Blue Bombers. Not great. No offense to Ithaca, but ironically enough, though, in terms of my gambling life, which I don't gamble often, but I've had the best streak gambling these past couple of weeks. So I'm wondering if it's a correlation. I don't mind making money, but I gotta be better for the people. I'm giving out these picks. I gotta be better. That's on me. Hand up. That's on me. Winning week this week, I promise.
All right. Well, like you said, you promised. We'll get into the picks now. Not exactly the greatest slate this week. A little bit underwhelming, I guess you could say. A lot of ranked versus unranked teams, but next weekend I think will make up for it kind of with all the rivalry games and whatnot. But still, a lot of big games to get into. We have a lot of the top teams on the schedule this week. If these guys, slip up at all, they could be finding themselves out. Oh wait, before we hop into that, we'll recap the new top 25. Georgia number 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, TCU 4, Tennessee 5, LSU 6, USC 7. Bama 8, Clemson 9, Utah 10, Penn State 11, Oregon 12, UNC at 13, Ole Miss 14, Kansas State 15, 16 is UCLA, 17 Washington, 18 Notre Dame, 19 Florida State, 20 UCF, 21 Tulane, 22 Oklahoma State, 23 Oregon State, 24 NC State, and 25 Cincinnati. Anything you want to touch on, Joe, with the latest rankings?
They said it best. Actually, I watched the rankings show last night as I was laying in bed getting ready for, field work today. They said that there's a clear cutoff line at number 9 after Clemson and before Utah, or in between those two, with the outlier at UNC at 13. Because at the end of the day, they're 9-1. They win their next 2, and they're 11-1 going into going to Charlotte, having to take on an 11-1 Clemson team. If UNC wins, it's a long shot still, but they're certainly not eliminated from playoff contention yet, because that loss against Notre Dame for both of these teams look better and better now that Notre Dame is at 18 and they keep climbing, and they're going to have another easy game this week. I believe, we host Boston College. If Notre Dame doesn't win that game, goodness gracious, but Notre Dame will most likely be 8-3, and then even if Notre Dame were to win out, which is kind of what UNC and Clemson are hoping for, that would also take USC out of the running as well. So then you're sitting there with the ACC winner having a legit, conversation to be in that playoff. And now USC is in a position where I think Georgia is going to be LSU in the SEC title game. I know that matchup's already set in stone. I think that's going to happen. Then it's going to come down to the Ohio State, Georgia at 1, the Ohio State Michigan winner at 2. If TCU wins out 3, then you're in a conversation of either Tennessee at 4, Michigan at 4, or if USC were to win out and win the Pac-12 at 4.
Yeah, it's we still have some moving parts certainly. Confused as to, I mean, I guess they could have them up there at number 8 with Alabama, but tell me, Joe, there's no chance that they find their way in, right?
I don't believe so. They were even talking last night on the show. David Pollack went off about Alabama being there. And they, of course, Reese Davis and all the ESPN analysts were like trying to make an argument for him. Well, they're only 2 plays away from 10-0. And then he goes, but they're also 3 plays away from 5-5. Like A&M, they beat A&M, stopping them at the goal line. Ole Miss has a pass in the end zone that's dropped, and they beat Texas by a point on a game-winning field goal. Those 3 plays happen differently, which it's easy to say. Alabama's a 5-5 football team. I don't think Bama gets in, especially at the fact that I think they play Austin Peay this week and then an Auburn team that's terrible, and they don't play in the SEC title game. And they also lost to Tennessee. So just all of those factors to begin with, they won't jump Tennessee, and I doubt they'll jump the loser of Michigan, Ohio State, unless that loser gets beat by like 50 points.
Yeah, I don't think it's just kind of weird seeing them sit there. You got to have that thought in the back of your mind. Is there a chance that they find their way in? But I agree with you, Joe, with pretty much what you said for the most part. That, I mean, I could see Clemson getting in, but that strength of schedule, like their opponents have been doggy all year. And UNC, maybe if there's some chaos, but you're not putting in a 2-loss Utah, 2-loss Penn State, a 2-loss Oregon. I think, we see North Carolina win this week. They hop Oregon or Utah, probably the loser of that game. I think we'll see UNC up at like the number 10 marker potentially by the end of this week, kind of given what happens with the other games. But still a lot of moving parts with this. This is nowhere near kind of settled, which is exciting. I think personally by the end of this, Michigan will be that team kind of on the outside looking in. But that's a topic for another day. We'll get into Michigan now, though, with the little segue there. Being our first game of the week, we have Illinois at number 3, Michigan, 12 o'clock on ABC. Michigan minus 17.5, over under 43. Big loss last week by Illinois to Purdue. This game would have been a ranked matchup for sure. And now there's a little bit of sizzle off of it. But still, I think this is going to be a pretty good game, Joe.
I don't know if it's going to be that good of a game. I think Michigan's going to win 31-10. I have them covering the 17.5. And I could be wrong because I'm going to get into the look-ahead factor later because we're going to talk about another game involving a top Big Ten school. At least I will be. But, yeah, I think Michigan's going to win this game pretty convincingly. This isn't a shot at Illinois. Illinois is having a great run. They're like the Kansas of the Big Ten. I'm pulling up right now. They're 7-3. And people, were saying, oh, well, now, here comes Illinois back down to earth. Illinois was projected to be one of the worst Power 5 teams in the country this year. The fact that they're even in this position is amazing. And the fact that they still have – currently the Big Ten West is Purdue at 4-3, Illinois at 4-3, Iowa at 4-3, and Minnesota at 4-3. And then and Wisconsin's there at 3-4. With 2 weeks left in the season, anything can happen. Even if Illinois loses this week, if there's chaos around them in the Big Ten West, which there normally is, Illinois could get in with a 5-4 conference record. Like, that's a real possibility. Shout out Brett Bielema. He's showing so much promise for years to come at Illinois. Because if you get Illinois back on track, Quail, it's kind of like we say with DePaul for basketball. You're telling me you can't recruit like Chicago? Chicago's the 3rd biggest city in America. Like, this is more so just a rant of how Illinois is going to be great in the future. And I'm not really have a lot about this game, I won't lie. I guess like Michigan's defense is better. I think Blake Corum is going to have a day. Blake Corum having a real shot to win the Heisman. But going forward for Illinois, this is huge for Brett Bielema. Even if he can keep this competitive, it just goes to show you, like, hey, Illinois has a chance to kind of be next up, especially with next year. Big Ten West isn't exactly a murderer's row. You get a competent quarterback, you get a solid running back. That's what they've been doing this year. And you get a good defense. That's a pretty good recipe. And especially in the Big Ten West, that'll keep you afloat for a long time to come. But give me the Wolverines convincingly at home.
Well, I mean, Joe, what he's doing here is he's essentially just rebuilding the Wisconsin program that he left before. So, and he had them competing for Rose Bowls before. I think I'm right there with you, Joe. I think he's got them going definitely in the right direction. Not enough this week, though. I like Michigan 24, Illinois 13. So I think this game's a little bit closer than you. I like Illinois to cover the 17.5, and I'll take under 43 here. Kind of back just to Illinois big picture, I guess, after a real hot start to the year. Came back down to earth these past 2 weeks, dropping back-to-back games to Michigan State and Purdue. Looked like they were going to be a shoe-in for the Big Ten title game. Now they kind of have an uphill climb with Purdue in the driver's seat. Still, though, really good year, 2 under Bielema. Even if they lose this one, I think they have Northwestern on the schedule next week, and that's a chance to go 8-4. I mean, pretty good year, too, for a team that kind of was left dead in the water when Lovie Smith was fired a few years ago. But pretty insane, though, Joe, looking at Michigan's schedule, that we are this deep into the season and that they've only played one ranked opponent. I mean, that's why next week, if they lose to, assuming they win this week and they lose next week to Ohio State, they have zero chance at the playoff in my eyes. They have played awful teams all season. And like I said, only one ranked team before heading into the Ohio State game next week. That's pretty insane. They know they have no room for error, and they have to find a way to win this game. The way that these two teams play, though, is very similar, which kind of gives me the reason to believe Illinois can cover. They're not going to be caught off guard. They know what's coming for them. They both want to run the ball, win the turnover battle, play strong defense. Both very good defenses. Michigan, number one scoring defense in the country, allowing only 11.2 points per game. And Illinois is surprisingly the third best scoring defense in the country, allowing only 12.5 points per game. So just the main difference in this one, kind of like we've been saying about Illinois throughout a little bit of this rant, that Michigan just has more Michigan guys right now than Illinois has guys. Like Illinois still has players that are, bottom to mid-level Big Ten players, not the elite of the elite. I think Bielema could get them back up there, be a team that's going, now I don't think ever you're winning national titles at Illinois, but if you're going 9-3, 10-2, competing for Big Ten titles and going to the Rose Bowl, that's a good feather in your cap, I think. So I think Illinois going to be a nice team for the years to come in the Big Ten, but not just yet. Close and ugly game here, but Michigan finds a way to win, and Blake Corum has a late score to put him away and really throw his name up into that Heisman conversation, and maybe even put him into a front runner if he has a big game this weekend next week. So, like I said, I'm taking Illinois plus 17.5, under 43. Michigan wins outright, though. Second game of the week. We're doing 6 games again this week. Like talking our Bombers in Cortland last week. Maybe we'll get them back if they go back on the show next week. But we have another special game this week. This one, FCS Division I battle, where College Game Day will be. This is 7-3 Montana at 9-1 Montana State, 2:00 on ESPN Plus. They usually don't put out spreads for the FCS games until like Friday night or Saturday morning. So if you do want to bet on this one and you kind of listen to what we have to say, then go back and look at the numbers. So we don't have a spread or a total. So just who do you think is going to win this one straight up, Joe?
Well, Coyle, I have news for you. This game, because of game day being there, actually does have a spread and total. Let me pull it up. I was looking last night on FanDuel, looking at some games. I got to find it. Unless they took it down, this is going to be really awkward because I was all jacked up for it because I saw it yesterday. Wow, this is really great podcasting right now as I'm scrolling through my phone trying to find the game.
Going to look.
Here we go. Montana State minus 1.5. I'm going to take them. Minus 125 on the money line. The over-under is 56.5. So I will be taking the over, and I will be taking Montana State to cover the minus 1.5. Montana State 37, Montana 25. I feel like this is the Bobcats' year. They made it to the national title game last year. North Dakota State, who needs to move up to FBS, has just dominated them as they've dominated basically everyone in the FCS. So, I mean, I don't got a lot to say. I couldn't tell you a single thing about either two of these teams as much as I want to, except the fact that Montana State loves to force mistakes. So I believe they played Weber State at home earlier in the year, and the long snapper for Weber State snapped the ball to the punter's head 4 times, resulting in not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 safeties, 4 whole safeties. And I mean, I don't know, something about Bozeman, Montana, makes players, make mistakes, makes the ball get clenched a little bit tighter, especially in a rivalry game like this where there's not going to be room for error. Montana is most likely fighting for a playoff spot just because I know FCS does a 24-team playoff. They do it because that's actually controlled by the NCAA, whereas FBS is not. And Montana, if they lose at 7-4, I don't know who they played, don't know who they beat, might have a tough time making it into the playoffs. But they win this game, they probably secure themselves a spot.
I like Montana State here too. I'm kind of with you though, Joe. Don't know much about this game, but with it being game day, I thought it would be kind of cool to throw some love to the little guys. I'll go Montana State 37, Montana 30. So State minus 1.5 over 56.5. Montana State looking to remain undefeated in the Big Sky Conference, but they're still behind Sac State. That's the Bees, the Hornets.
Hornets, my Sacramento State Hornets.
Yeah, they're 10-0 in the Big Sky Conference this year. So Montana State, though, high-powered offense, scoring at least 28 in every game this season, including 2 games where they scored 63 and 72, respectively. In rivalry games like these, they kind of throw the record books out the window. This should be close. I think Montana State comes out a little bit slow with all that emotion of game day being there, like we saw with App State and Troy at the beginning of the season. But the Bobcats figured out in the second half, and they come back to win it in thrilling fashion. I was kind of upset that you didn't wear your shirt on this episode, though, Joe.
Hey, hand up. I got to be better. I actually wore it yesterday. How sad is that? Because we were going to do beef yesterday.
Yep.
I swear to God, my Fighting Bobcats shirt that I custom inked illegally. Probably shouldn't be putting that on the internet, but yeah, I did. So what are you going to do about it? Bobcats.
All right, third game of the week, Big 12. I feel like these 2 teams might be our most featured teams of the season.
Oh, yeah.
For TCU, and then at Baylor, who's unranked, but they've just played, I feel like, good teams all year, and they're ranked at the beginning of the year. They've been on our show a bunch. I feel like I know them like the back of my hand. But 12 o'clock on Fox, TCU minus 3, over under 58 here.
Boy, oh boy, does Baylor stink. Boy, oh boy. I thought they were going to win that game last week. I've done this twice to Kansas State now. Kansas State has blown out Oklahoma State when we did the show the week you weren't able to do it. And then I picked against Kansas State with Baylor, and both times they've just completely dominated the teams I picked to win the game. So because of that, I can't forgive Baylor. Now, of course, this is going to be the game Baylor wins. I'm going TCU 44, Baylor 28. I think Baylor's kind of packing it in. I have a lot of faith in Dave Aranda. I think he's a good coach, but I mean, it's tough when you're 6-4 at this point. But the sad part is just how bad after TCU the Big 12 is, just because it makes no sense. I believe Baylor is a game outside of that second spot. Yeah, Kansas State is 5-2. Then you have Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Texas at 4-3. So if Kansas State trips up, which is possible, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but they have to go to West Virginia and they have to play Kansas, who Kansas is a good team this year. It's not a foregone conclusion that Kansas State's going to make it. So that being said, I mean Baylor is still fighting for something, but it's tough to and this is a big rivalry game. At certain points, I was having my doubts watching the games last Saturday, thinking, "Ooh, TCU might trip up on the road here." But I mean, I don't know. This Baylor team, something just seems off with them. Like I don't know what to put my finger on it. I don't really know how to say it. Something just doesn't seem right with this Baylor team. A team that was getting legitimate playoff buzz in the preseason. A team that was, I believe, when they lost to BYU, they were like number 9 in the country.
I think it was like 9 versus 16.
Yeah, they were number 9 in the country, and then Baylor just since that loss, I mean, they've gone like 5-3. It's not like they've been lighting up the world. They haven't exactly beaten the best teams in the world. It's depressing because I had a lot of high hopes for this Baylor team this year, but TCU give it to me big. Almost just lost power here at the lake. I don't know if you saw that, but yeah, give me the Frogs. Give me the Frogs. They're gonna do the damn thing. They're gonna do it. Shout out Nigro. They're gonna do it.
TCU -3 here. Yeah, I think I might double down and maybe even make it the best bet of the week. Over 58. I feel like a team like this that we've paid attention to so much all year, I finally have like a good read on them. And I'm glad I can come here onto the show and say I was right about them last week. I did the old clean sweep. TCU plus the points, TCU outright on the money line, and under the 66 last week. And then I was right on K-State beating Baylor as well. But here we are again with TCU getting no respect, only a 3-point favorite in this one. Baylor was supposed to be a defensive team under their defensive coach, Dave Aranda, but really they have struggled on that side of the ball all year. They're allowing 25 a game. The main concern for TCU going into the Texas game was their defense, and the books didn't think they could stop Quinn Ewers and company, but they dominated them, held them to only 10 points. I just think you have to take TCU in this one. The way that they can, if they want to kind of explode on offense, they just keep winning, and it seems like nobody's believing in them. And really, it even sounds like the guys on like the show last night are just counting on TCU falling, which at one point, that's kind of what I was riding on, that the fact that they were due for a slip up and a poor game, but you can't count them out. I mean, they just keep finding ways to win, and they're definitely the best team in the Big 12, and they'll be favored in the Big 12 title game. All they have to do is win these next few games, and they're in. I mean, it's easier said than done, but still, they're going to have a very, very good chance to go to the college football playoff this year. The big confidence boost I got in them personally last week was seeing them win only 17-10. We've seen them now win a defensive slugfest. We've also seen them win high-level shootouts. This is a team that can win in multitudes of ways, and that's really my kind of measuring stick on a good team. If a team's able to take away your biggest strength one day, like if they do get, say, matched up with Georgia in that 1-4 game, and Georgia throws the kitchen sink at them on defense, can they win if it's 24-20, something like that? And I think they showed that they are a team that could potentially do that. This is just a weird line with TCU being only 3-point favorites. It scares me away a little bit, also with the rivalry factor that you were talking about, Joe. But 7-point dogs last week at Texas, and they still found a way to win. I think the Horned Frogs win big in this one. 38-21, TCU -3, and the over 58 just hits there. Fourth game of the week now. Another not awful game, but still not kind of what we've been accustomed to, but still has big ramifications for the playoff. 5 Tennessee at South Carolina, William Bryce Stadium, 7 p.m. on ESPN. Vols -21.5, over under 66 here.
Yeah, this game in Georgia, Kentucky, I'm looking at the SEC slate right now. This is the week where a lot of the SEC schools will play like the FCS and like the lower tier FBS schools getting ready for their rivalry games, which I love when people make fun of. And I'm one of those people because I think it's stupid, but people point out a good point. Like there's a reason why the SEC gets so many teams in the conversation for the playoff. They schedule way, like scheduling a late, kind of tune-up game, like for Alabama to get ready for Auburn. Like I know Auburn isn't good this year, but when Auburn was good, they had the tune-up Auburn had the same thing, like to get ready. So, but it stinks when you see, like the best game is probably this one in terms of competitive factor because Georgia's going to steamroll Kentucky in that other game. But I got the Vols winning this game 45-22. So I got the Vols covering 21.5 and the over of 66 simply because the fact how I said last week for the over. If Tennessee wants to keep their names, from not getting jumped by a potential USC or a Clemson, having that conference title win with only one loss, even though their schedule might not be as good, Tennessee needs to win these games with style points. They need to blow teams out. Like some people were saying, Tennessee was, not having good sportsmanship for doing that at the end of the game last week, keeping their starters in and running it up on Mizzou. But you need to do that if you're in a spot like Tennessee. You can't hold back. That's why I'm also taking the over of 66. This isn't a shot at South Carolina. They're having a solid year, but they're also 6-4. Like they're 6-4, and when they play like the really good teams, like losing to Florida 38-6, Arkansas beats them, Georgia smokes them. Like you see when they take that step up in competition, they're not there yet. And it's also a team I could do in college football math here. Missouri beat them in this exact same stadium 23-10. They also, South Carolina, are looking ahead to Clemson next week. This could be a South Carolina season where I know they were briefly 25th in the AP poll. South Carolina could be 6-6. So give me the Vols here big.
I'll take Tennessee too, 42-35. So I actually like this one to kind of be a bit of a dogfight. South Carolina plus 21.5 over 66. Kind of like what we were saying though, Joe. Like when we have one of our big five, or in this case, big six games of the week, one of them's a 21.5 point favorite. That kind of goes to show you the kind of level of games we're having this week. But I think South Carolina has the chance to make this a little weird. We are going to see chaos at some point. Don't know where it's going to be, what it's going to be. Maybe it's TCU Baylor, maybe it's this game. But something crazy is going to happen that comes out of left field that we're not expecting. It happens every year. I'm not predicting South Carolina to win, but I do think they put some fear in the Vols' eyes. South Carolina is undefeated at home this year against teams that are not called the Georgia Bulldogs, and this is senior day. They get a really awesome, like one of the more underrated home field advantages in the country, and especially at night. I've seen what those tailgates down there look like, and have a family friend that went there, and they would go all day, every day, on Saturdays down there. So that place is going to be absolutely rocking at night, not for only just the players, but all the students for their last college football home game. It's pretty amazing though how Spencer Rattler fell off from being the number one pick going into last season, viewed as that guy, to this year having only 8 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. South Carolina doesn't bring an elite defense to the table either, which kind of worries me with playing Tennessee, allowing 26 points per game. The numbers are saying the Vols win and the Vols win big, but this is just one of those like gut feeling type things, like all the circumstances around it being senior day, night game, a potential like catapult into next season where, oh, wow, we beat Tennessee. And then maybe, who knows, knock off Clemson. Next year, you're looking at South Carolina as a preseason top 25 team. With all that being said, I'm still taking the Vols to win and win a tight one, but I think it's going to be a high scoring back and forth, better than we kind of expect battle. And if you kind of believe in anything that I said during that, South Carolina on the money line right now is at plus 1,000. Sprinkle $10 on them, you get a real nice payday there. So I won't laugh at you in the face if you make that pick. I'm not expecting it to be done or South Carolina to come out victorious in this one, but I think they do strike some real fear into Tennessee's eyes, and we get those tweets. Turn over to ESPN. South Carolina has the ball down a touchdown with 2 minutes to go. All right. Well, Joe, we lost Joe there, it looks like. So I guess I'll carry into the next game and start it off with my take now on the USC UCLA game. We have number 7 UCLA at number 16 UCLA. There he is. He's back. I started going into the USC UCLA game. We got that 8 o'clock on Fox. USC's minus 2.5 over under 73.5. Joe, now that you're back with us, want to rip into this one?
Yeah, sorry about that. The Lake Wi-Fi, like I told you before, Coil is on one today. Just completely lost connection. I'm like on ESPN looking at some of these games. I got off ESPN. I'm going to see if that helps at all. I have I lied. I have UCLA winning this game 32-29. I just think this is typical Pac-12 is just going to eat itself up again. This isn't. I think USC is a really good team going forward, kind of like what we were saying with Illinois, except to a much more, higher extent. People thought they were going to be good. Some people were saying playoff, but I don't know how serious they were really being, because there was a lot of question marks coming in with all the transfer portal guys. But they have had a great season. Caleb Williams is a solid quarterback. But USC also just refuses to blow teams out. Like even the bad teams, like they'll win, but they won't like smoke teams. Like they smoked Colorado last week. But besides that, like they were kind of struggling against Cal. They get in these weird games where, you get into a game like that with UCLA, they're going to make you pay. This is the best UCLA team I've seen in years. And I think them being at home, I think they're finally going to get a decent home crowd. I saw the game was listed as a sellout, but DTR's last ride. UCLA still fighting for a Pac-12 title game spot. Give me the Bruins here, 32-29, kind of lower scoring. I don't know. I'm seeing it to be a little bit more of a slugfest rather than a complete shootout.
All right, this is one we'll go against each other here. I'm going to take USC 49, UCLA 45. So USC minus 2.5 and the over smack in there of 73.5. It really pains me that this isn't a bigger game. This should be two top 10 teams squaring off, but UCLA had to go out there against Arizona and fuck it up and just eliminated them from the playoff. After we talked about a bunch on the show last week how the Pac-12 had life, but UCLA and Oregon, which we'll touch on soon, both had to go out there and screw that up for us. So this is still probably the most entertaining game of this weekend, and that is evident with this total being projected at 73.5. I hope this is like 52-51 or something when we see like a late 2-point conversion to win it. Don't really care who wins what team, but I just wanted to see the scoreboard in this one light up like the damn 4th of July out there. These teams are combining to average 81 points per game and both bring some really fun, dynamic, and dual threat quarterbacks to the table. The reason why USC has been so good this year, I was kind of doing a bit of a deeper dive into their numbers. They have been able to turn it around so quickly, and obviously that's due to Lincoln Riley coming in, Caleb Williams as well, but they've taken care of the football so well. Caleb Williams only has 2 interceptions on the season, and they've only turned it over 3 times all year. I don't care what level of football you're playing. Those numbers are extraordinary. I was surprised to see even in their one loss, they didn't turn over the football. I thought maybe that game against Utah that they lost, they've turned it over a couple of times. Still kept good care of the football against a really good Utah team. They did struggle to defend in their one loss, though, a mobile quarterback in Cam Rising. He ran for 60 yards and 3 touchdowns on them, so that does worry me a little bit about DTR. He's not going to be much easier to contain, but he's one of the better dual threat quarterbacks we've seen in college football over these past few years. And like you said, Joe, wouldn't be surprised to see them pull out this win over their arch rival and potentially go back to the Pac-12 title game for the first time since God knows when. UCLA is a little bit more of a turnover-prone team, though, this year. They've turned it over 11 times this season to USC's 3. I think that's kind of the difference in this one. USC's not going to beat themselves. And after last week's devastating loss to Arizona, UCLA might have kind of the wind knocked out of their sails. I don't know if they're able to bounce back here. And UCLA is still in the contention for the playoff with that 7 spot. So I like USC to win this one in a thriller and by far the best game of the weekend, in my opinion. All right, last game of the week before we get into best bet and upset special. Number 10, Utah at number 12, Oregon. Oregon, just like we talked about with USC and UCLA, went out there and fucked it up last weekend. Cost our buddy Jimmy $100 in his parlay by not even winning. But 10:30 kick on ESPN. This will be the fun late night game to watch at the bar. Oregon -3, over under 62.
You see what happens when I fucking bet on Bo Nix, Coil? You see what happens? I finally say, "Oh, Nix, I'm gonna believe in you. I'm gonna believe in you," and you break my heart again. I was right about being wrong about Bo. I was wrong about being wrong about being wrong about Bo Nix. I mean,
Made a lot of sense.
I do. I make a lot of sense, Coyle. That's why you always have me on this show. Oregon, and I was listening to this on a podcast, and he said, the guy was saying, I don't know what it is about Oregon, but there's something with that program recently after Mariota left that. Every time they have that chance to take that step back to the playoff, back to that national stage, they just piss down their leg. Washington is a good team. Let's not take anything away from Washington. But you have them at home, and you are on paper the better team, and you can't close that game out. I mean, that's, upsetting to say the least for the Ducks. So give me the Utes here. The Utes are a more fit team, and the Utes are playing pissed off. They think that they are a better team than what they showed earlier in the year, losing at UCLA and then losing at Florida. This is shaping up to be another typical Utah season, though, where they're going to play spoiler. I'm telling you right now, they're going to sneak into the Pac-12 title game and win it again. And they're going to play in the Rose Bowl, probably against Michigan this year. And Michigan's probably going to beat them in a thriller. And Utah's going to be back to, next year, though, they're going to be the team that everyone talks about making the playoff, including myself. I already know I'm going to fall for that trap. But give me the Utes here. I just think that last week was one of those losses that can, kind of break you, especially with Oregon trying to bounce back from that 49-3 loss. Now it's like, ooh, maybe there were some reasons why we lost that badly to Georgia. Give me the Utes here. I will never bet on Bo Nix again. Wherever NFL team he goes to, I will bet against them every single week. And I know he's going to go to the Jets just because I'm saying this.
And then you're going to bet on Darren fucking Ruff.
I would rather have Darren Ruff at quarterback. I really would.
All right, I take the Utes in this one. I'll take the Utes in this one too. 35-33 over Oregon. So Utah underdogs here, +3 over 62. I remember last year. Sorry if you just mentioned this, but last year, didn't they play 2 out of 3 weeks, or was it back-to-back weeks at the end of the year?
But yeah, it was 2 out of 3. They played that game where I remember last year we were at, I think it was like the soccer house watching the game. I told you, I'm like, oh, I took Oregon -3, and then Utah smoked them, and then smoked them again in the Pac-12 title game.
Yeah, that was kind of the big, I guess, moment that game where Mario realized that Oregon, he was kind of tapped out and he wanted to go test his luck somewhere else at Miami. But Oregon, like the same thing I said about UCLA, thanks for minimizing the overall importance of this one. Still should be a pretty awesome game, though. After choking against Washington last week, it's a shame that because they had a path to the playoff right in front of them. But still, this should be one of the better games of the weekend as we're talking about it. Featuring 2 of the better quarterbacks in the country. I know you have some hate for Bo Nix, but you kind of can't deny that he's had a really nice year. Ducks being -3 at home is essentially just making this one like a pick'em, and I'm really torn in this one. As I view these teams as pretty even. They've had some really good moments, but some pretty low lows as well. The reason I'm going to go side with Utah is just due to their defense. They only allow 20 a game, and I have more faith in them to get a late game stop. More than an Oregon defense that's allowing nearly 400 yards a game. I think that you can move the ball on them. Utah's going to be a little more stingy on that side of the ball. Utah also, like we just touched on, did dominate Oregon twice last year and just has had their number recently. So give me Cam Rising and the Utes on the road outright here and clear and kind of that path to go to the Pac-12 title game. All right, time for best bet now. I thought I was going to have 2 in a row last week, but UCLA pushed. Let's get back to the winning ways this week. Give me over in the Kansas-Texas game. That's 63.5. They both are combining to put up 70 a game this year. They both can move the ball, average a combined 430 yards per game between the two of them. And Kansas also allows 443 yards per game. They haven't been exactly known to be world beaters on defense. I expect Texas to have a bounce-back week in this one, coming off that 10-point performance to TCU. They have too much talent on the offensive side of the ball to have another stinker this week. So I think this is like an old school Big 12 style kind of Texas Tech versus, Oklahoma, or Patrick Mahomes threw the ball like almost 90 times a few years ago. We see this one like 50-45, something like that. Really like the over and just up and down game in this one. Maybe even like a basketball score type of matchup. But Kansas, Texas over 63.5 is my best bet of the week.
As our friend Frank the Tank would say, which is why, by the way, I did the glasses biting, because there's going to be people that don't know who Frank the Tank is. I have no clue why I just did that. Come fade our picks. Come fade our picks. Fade our picks with us. I'm taking the over in the Bedlam game. It is a system play for me. I mean, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, which, by the way, just goes to show you how far those programs have fallen off this year. They're playing this weekend, and they were not one of our games.
Mm-hmm.
That over is 65.5. I'm going to take that over. That's going to be my best bet of the week. My other game I was looking at was Maryland plus 27.5 at home versus Ohio State. Kind of because what I was saying at the top of the show with Illinois, Michigan, that look-ahead factor. Because the Big Ten, like Ohio State and Michigan, have just put themselves so much further ahead of everyone else that it's really just evolved into a one-game season. Kind of like when it was Auburn and Alabama when they, those couple of years, still to the point kind of with the Iron Bowl, because if Alabama loses, then the SEC normally has a different champ. But, definitely look into Maryland plus 27.5 versus Ohio State. I vividly remember, Coyle, I believe it was our freshman year. Ohio State went to Maryland, and Maryland had a chance to beat them on that 2-point conversion, and it was either they dropped the ball in the end zone or the quarterback just threw one of the worst passes we'd ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
It was those two things, and they lost by a point. Ohio State always has those weird road games, and I feel like we haven't had that this year. I know we had a weird Penn State game where they ended up winning big, but give me Maryland plus 27.5 as a second bet to look into. I'll count it towards my record. I'll have two best bets this week. Bedlam over and Maryland plus 27.5.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Bedlam game. I feel like we would have been remiss if we didn't at least mention that one with the last game of the series potentially. It sounds like that they won't be continuing that when they go to the SEC. Is next year when they go to the SEC, or is that 2 years from now?
They have one more year. They said they're going to stay all the way because they'd have to pay a lot of money because the Big 12 try to get as much money as possible. But Coyle, what I think is going to happen, I think it's going to be like the backyard brawl that opened up the season. They're not going to play for like 5 or 6 years. Oklahoma is going to quickly realize, wow, playing in the SEC sucks. And then they're going to be like, oh, wait, one of the best rivalries in college football, we're just not playing it anymore? That's stupid. So they're going to start playing it again, and they're going to make it a regular thing. But I'll transition us into our upset specials of the week, our underdog picks. I'm going Arizona State at home plus 250 against Oregon State. Not a lot of research here. I just didn't really like a lot of these upset picks this week, so I'm just riding with the Sun Devils. Forks up. Big year next year coming for the Sun Devils.
What was your what was the total on that Oklahoma State game? Was 66, you said?
65.5.
65.5. All right, so it does hit. All right. My upset special. Point. Can you move your big head out of the way and point to that flag behind you?
I'll do you one better. I'll just move the camera closer.
I'm going with our UConn Huskies this week, plus 310. I love the value here. 10-point dogs against Army. Army's only 3-6 on the year with those wins over. Ready, Joe? FCS Villanova, FCS Colgate, and Louisiana Monroe. So not exactly Murderers Row that they're playing or that they've beaten this year. We've joked a lot about UConn over the years, but they're bowl eligible now. It's pretty insane to say that. And with 3 wins in a row and 5 out of the last 6, I think this is really good value, plus 310. I think that they've taken care of the teams that they should take care of, and I think Army is another one of those teams. Like we always say with the service academies, you never know what to expect from them. They could be completely on that day in terms of their triple option attack, but I think this is too good a value to pass up. So give me UConn plus 310 there over Army. But that'll do it for week 12 already. It's really sad that we're at this point of the season, but we got rivalry week coming up and then conference title games. So buckle up. We got our biggest shows of the week coming up these next few weeks. Anything else, Joe, before we head out?
Let's dominate. Shout out the Huskies. Go to a bowl game. I don't care what anyone says. They literally invented a bowl game last year because North Texas and I believe Ball State didn't have a bowl game. So, like I've been seeing on Twitter, people, well, UConn isn't guaranteed a spot. They literally made up a bowl game last year. Unless there's an odd number of teams, UConn's going to go to a bowl game this year. So, shout out the Huskies. Shout out Jim Mora. And, yeah, get into it. Solid weekend. And this is one of the weekends that we would have killed for back during COVID, for all the people saying this isn't a great slate. This was back in, like, June of 2020. If you told me we were going to have Florida Atlantic basketball and Bowling Green basketball, we were going to like it. Shout out John Santa. Let's ride.
All right, we will talk next week.